Good evening. Welcome to the Age of Quarantine. My name is David Castillo. Welcome, everybody. It's been a wild weekend of me hanging out with my parents for the first time in about a year. Yep, lots of vaccinations have been happening, and I finally got to see them, which was amazing. So, shout out to my parents. Let's talk about our guest. We have an amazing guest. We have Korine. I saw Korine for the first time actually playing a show with them. I make music under the name Confines, and I got asked to play a show, and the headliner was Korine, and it was the first time I ever heard of them, and I just accepted right away on listening to it because I just thought it was absolutely fantastic music, very new waves, synth pop, new romantic. It just hit everything I pretty much like about that stuff. So without further ado, here's Korine. Let's bring them on and we'll get into it. So join us. We're gonna have a drink. We're gonna have some Japanese whiskey. Hi, guys. Hi, how are you?
Hey, what's up?
Wow, two for one. I love it. And and my sweatshirt matches the lighting. We have everything. We're perfect right now. Cheers. Happy day. Thanks for coming on the show. Welcome
of course,
to
thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Congrats on being able to see your family.
Yeah, it was a big deal, man. I was just so I don't live far away from them, right? And it's been that way my whole life. So it was my first time being able to do that. My pops is 80, my family's old. So time is of the essence. So cheers to you, Julio and Didi. It was great to hang out with you. And hopefully soon we'll be able to hang out again.
Yeah,
play
totally.
some shows, do some of these things that I remember doing,
Right.
But let's talk about Korine. Let's get into various things. So with Age of Quarantine, what we normally do is we like to chart the progression, the musical progression of things, right? From being a kid to now. What made the people behind the band create the band that they are, become the musicians they are. So the group was formed in Philadelphia, right? But where are you both originally from?
Go ahead. Well, I'm originally from New Jersey, from like the Trenton area, and I moved to Philly, which is where I met Trey. Yeah, we both. I'm from West Virginia originally.
Oh wow! All right.
Yeah. I grew up on a farm in West Virginia, and then we both moved here in 2015, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like we moved here within like 2 months of each other, and we ended up both like by chance working at this like same shitty cafe job that we had, and that's just where we met, hit it off, did a lot of like goofing off at work, and just kind of like naturally happened from there.
Yeah, the shitty service job has brought many bands together, I feel like, and that's definitely true. So I'm in Jersey right now, actually, right outside Asbury, but I'm from Long Island, and obviously have lived or gone to Brooklyn for pretty much my entire life. So you, Trey, being from West Virginia, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was it like kind of growing up over there and just kind of getting into music? What was kind of your earliest experiences into getting into music and playing it?
It's a it's a weird place. Like it's obviously very rural, and like all my extended family still live in that area, and like all my cousins are like, for lack of a better word, rednecks. Like they're all like farmers and truckers, and like they're mostly good people. Obviously butt heads on some things, but when I was growing up, I'd say when I was like 11, 12, I just happened to like get into skateboarding, and that just kind of paved my way, I think, into like getting into like punk music, and then made me want to like play in bands and like all that stuff. So I just started finding kids, and there weren't a lot of us that were doing it. There was like, I used to roll with like a group of like 10 kids max when I was in middle school. We used to skate together and like play punk music badly together. And then like that kind of just evolved naturally from there. And my parents were thankfully pretty encouraging of me pursuing music. and yeah, it just kind of became like an integral part of my life.
Sure, yeah.
From like 10, 11, 12.
Yeah, and I think that that's right, like the more that formative time, right, where everyone's sort of becoming their own little person, you know, I like this and forming their own
Right.
personality and stuff like that. Morgie, what was it like for you, you know, growing up in Trenton and stuff like that? Obviously, I kind of understand your existence a little bit more than Trey's because I grew up on Long Island outside of New York City. New York City for me was like a big beacon. For you, maybe Philly or New York, you kind of in between. Tell
Well,
me
you live in
about
New
growing
York.
up for you a little bit.
Yeah, like I feel like although we're from like pretty different places, like our trajectory was like pretty similar, you know. I got into skateboarding as well, and that usually leads to like some form of punk music, and you know, but I definitely like grew up like listening to a lot of, you know, new wave and stuff like that just from my parents. But yeah, I mean, it's very similar. I was playing in punk bands and shitty punk bands and, you know, metal stuff and whatever. But I just got kind of like drawn into electronic music because it's, I don't know, it's like music you could kind of do anywhere with nothing. And that was really appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, and I have the same story. Skateboarding is definitely one of the great like equalizers in like youth culture, from
Totally.
Korine to you know, Converge.
Yeah.
Like skateboarding is like an integral part, and like I wouldn't be doing Saint Vitus or having the life I have now without skateboarding. I definitely heard my first Iron Maiden song on a toy machine video, you know?
Yeah, totally.
We
For sure.
definitely share these things, and I also I guess, you know, as I was growing up my taste started evolving, and I love to dance, right? Like I'm a Colombian first generation person. I love to dance, and so when I discovered kind of the idea of post punk, and I'm like, this is dance music for punk people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I get this. I understand it, and I like immediately loved it, and I wanted to participate. Usually wearing really flashy clothes and dancing. That was really like my sort of role. What was it like, just, you know, starting to try and make music? Were you always a singer, Morgie? Trey, were you always composing? Like how was that sort of, you know, kind of growing up? What was the evolution of like your own particular skills?
For me, I like the appeal for like with electronic music happened kind of like after I've been playing in bands for a while. You know, when you're in high school, there's a point where it's like, you know, you have friends who want to play music with you, and that's great, but it's always like varying levels of how interested people are, and like people will just like drop off randomly. So I kept having like bands just kind of fall apart on me, and then I kind of found electronic music, and I was like, okay, I can rely on myself and no one else. And I kind of like went full into that like end of high school, because I was like, well, now I can actually focus on something and know that it's not going to like fall apart because of someone else deciding that it's over, you know? So I've been like composing music electronically for, I guess, like 12, 13 years now. And it's kind of happened like as a result of that. But,
Got it. So
yeah.
just that sort of self-determinism, like it's on me now.
Right.
I don't have to wait for three other people to show up and their schedules and
Exactly.
whatever kind of other thing. And Morgie, for you, were you always like singing in bands and doing things of that nature? Was that always your role, or did that sort of evolve over time?
I mean, kind of like I always really like enjoyed singing and like looked up to, you know, certain singers. I really liked bands that like had like the lead singer was like very distinctive and like Placebo, for instance. Like a lot of people would consider, you know, his voice to be maybe even like annoying, but there's something about it to me that like I've just always been drawn to like those kind of unique singers that don't like sound really like anybody else. And I just kind of like, I don't know, it was weird. It was just like I was always kind of like pushed into the role of like singing a lot of the time. just because I don't know, people just thought it would like make sense for me to sing. So yeah, I mean, I was always interested in it and stuff, but I'm like a pretty shy person. So in terms of being like you know, like a front person or like a main singer or something, like it wasn't really something I was, you know, seriously considering for a while. But you know, it's like it gets easier, and even though it's, you know, I still have anxiety and stuff, it's like definitely more manageable than it was.
And that comes with experience and time. And I think that one of the things that we like to talk about on the show is the process, because a lot of people see like this fully more realized thing, right? They listen to like new arrangements or whatever. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it took years for these people to develop into the musicians that they
Mhm.
are. And there's no playbook for this, right? It's like, hey, I
Right.
want to sing in this kind of group or whatever. And everybody has their own stories about kind of developing that. And like,
Right.
yeah, there's anxiety, there's the you know, kind of creative processes and pitfalls and finding the right people to collaborate with, as you have, right? That's what we really like talking about here. So as you were saying, you like these sort of distinctive voices and things of that nature, which I'm sort of the same. And I'm a little more naturally extroverted, but I was pushed into singing roles for all the metal and bands that I was in.
Right.
Like, all right, cool, this is what I can do. And it wasn't until much later where I tried to kind of actually make music. So it's very interesting. So you two met in the city of Philadelphia working this kind of, you know, whatever job, right?
Yeah.
So, so what made you to come to Philadelphia? Like, just in general, was it like a school thing? Was it just like, hey, I got to get out of Trenton in West Virginia? What drove you to the city of Philadelphia?
For me, basically my whole life from like early, like as far as I can remember it, I always felt like I was supposed to be somewhere else other than West Virginia. Like
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, like I like visiting my parents' house. Like where I grew up was beautiful. I didn't have like a bad childhood by any means. It's just like I always was like I should be somewhere basically more urban. Like I always felt that. And then it just wasn't always like financially viable for me, and it wasn't until, you know, around 2015, and I was finally able to like make the jump. And I'd considered New York for a while, but Philly was just like a little bit closer and a lot cheaper. So that ended up being the move for me.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like before Philly, I was in Brooklyn actually, and I don't know. I was just working like 3 jobs and to be broke, to like still not have any money. And, you know, the whole kind of reasoning behind moving to New York was like, because I like art and music and wanted to try to pursue that in some capacity. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that in New York. So I moved to Philly, and I've since been able to like focus on things that, you know, make me happy and stuff.
No, I think you're totally right, and I think it's sort of unfortunately a bigger symptom of a lot of things that we've sort of seen not only in New York but in big cities in general, right? It's like you
Yeah.
go there, like New York for me was always like, you know, if you make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, kid. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I grew up on Long Island dreaming of like the Lower East Side and, you know, romanticizing Iggy and the Ramones, and like that whole world to me was just like, that was it. And then when I grew up going to Coney Island High, you know, like in my teen years and stuff like that, that was like everything, right? And
Yeah.
then like if you told me where St. Vitus would be if I was a kid, I'd be like maybe like Avenue A. It wouldn't be like the asshole of Greenpoint, you know, like that was not the case. It's, you know, there's a real human kind of like cost and value as far as trying to make art, make it sustainable for yourself, and also like have the time and the bandwidth in order to create, right? Like you're saying, you can't do this just being run ragged and you know, not having the time to create.
For
Totally.
sure. And it's like, it wasn't, you know, it's not like I don't like New York or something. It was just like, you know, I didn't really have like some of my friends had like a bit of help from like maybe their parents or something like that. Like with me, I had nothing, so it was kind of hard for me to you know, make it work. And the thing was is like I could have stayed and I could have kept working 3 jobs, you know, to be in New York, but for me and with what I wanted to do, it just at the time I wasn't able to stay.
Right.
But, you know,
I like you coming back with Korine better. So I'm very excited about your life choices, and that's why we're here. So we're working the fucking shit job. We're becoming friends. Thank God for that. And then when does the subject of like, hey, maybe we should try and make music sometime? You know, like I want to do this, you want to do this. How did that sort of come? Because it's like being homies is kind of easy, right?
Right.
But going to play music is like another thing, another pursuit.
So when we met, we were making music separately, and we didn't start doing Korine together until like really doing it until like mid 2017. But I was making music by myself and just, you know, doing whatever. And Morgie was doing Korine, but it's like in its very, very early stages. And it was like a bit more, I don't know, I guess a bit more raw, a bit more emo. But
yeah, it was like just way less refined.
Yeah.
You know.
And I have like a little bit of experience. I had, well, more now than I had basically none then comparatively, but you know, they asked me to help them like record some stuff because I had like the means to do so. So that kind of opened the door there, and I was helping them like record the early Korine stuff. And then as that started progressing, we kind of just naturally started making some songs together, and then it ended up just scrapping the whole thing that you were working on.
I was just like, we just started making music together, and I just was like, wait, I like this more than what I'm like making by myself. So why don't we just do that?
Yeah.
And that's just kind of like how it started.
Yeah. And then it just kind of, we did our first, like, it was a lot of trial and error in 2017, was like a lot of headaches, because like trying to figure out, like, we were both learning new stuff, you know, at the time. Like I mean, a lot of people, I guess, don't know that we like do all of our own recording, like mixing, producing. We do all of that just like ourselves always have. And at the time we started, I didn't know how to record vocals really. I'd never done it because I'm not a singer.
And we also didn't like have anything.
we had like no gear, like everything that we have now, we kind of just like acquired over the last couple of years. And like, it's just all been like trial and error and like doing what works, what doesn't work. Okay, this doesn't work. Like, and you can definitely hear that in like the stuff we put out. There's like you can hear like the audio progression of like, okay, like the first stuff sounds pretty shitty, and then it kind of like.
Yeah, it's funny how that kind of works, right? It's like resources definitely can help make things and art better, right? So I'm the same way. I'm sitting in my studio here, and now I have like a lot of more stuff. But like 2 years ago when I started Confines, sure didn't. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I had to learn like a lot of stuff. So as you were saying, Morgie, you were like, hey, I like this better than what I'm doing alone, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I want to be part of this unit, which I think is like, that's quite a moment, right? To kind of realize that and sort of be like, hey, you know, I want to take on a collaborator. Because Trey was saying before, it's like, man, I'm doing electronic music because I like, you know, I don't want to deal with these motherfuckers who are going to leave me high and dry, you know?
Yeah.
So why did you think at that time, you know, because being in a band is obviously the creative process and stuff, but if you're not going to have the commitment or have the juice to really like put it together and work together, it's not going to go very far. What did you see in one another where you're like, you know what, I think we're committed to this? And like, was there a chat? Did we have like the talk? I
don't think we ever really did have a talk, honestly. It all has felt, at least from my perspective, it has all felt very natural. And like at this point where I am in my life and where we're at the band, it kind of feels like I've just always been in this band, because it just becomes such an integral part of my life. And I feel like it kind of just, I don't want to like say it was like fate or whatever, but it feels like it came together very naturally and very like not forced at all.
I know that like, at least with, you know, when I heard Trey's music before, there was definitely like something to it where I was like, okay, this this person knows about like composition and like is doing stuff that like I haven't really heard other people do. So I was like definitely open to working with Trey, and Trey, you know, had like a lot more technical knowledge than I do, you know, and I don't know, I just thought it made sense, and I was definitely like stoked about it.
Me too.
Sure.
A lot of complementary qualities, I think.
Absolutely. So as you're sort of arriving at this, you know, new partnership, it's like, all right, Korine's the band, we're doing this. I mean, a lot has been sort of been made about, you know, just kind of the aesthetic of the band, right? It's like this, I think people always say like it's this sort of new wave thing. To me, honestly, it's more pop than even like new wave in like the most positive sense of that word. I love pop music. So like, you know, like, you know, in my feeling, that's the way it's sort of been trending. When you first started kind of bringing a lot of this songwriting together, how did it go? And then how has it sort of evolved into kind of the things that we're hearing now?
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, I think the process has kind of been like pretty similar the whole time. We kind of like create everything together, whether it's like us like sitting down and just making something like start to finish right there, or like Trey could make, you know, a short loop and then send it to me and be like, what do you think of that? And I'll be like, ooh, I like this. And then we'll work on that together and expand it. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just always been like us just, you know, in the studio, just kind of trying to figure it out.
Just faking it until we make something that we like.
That's it.
Yeah, and that's great though. I mean, in a lot of ways, you know, because for some people, you know, like if you watch like the Air documentary, those two aren't in the studio at the same time almost ever, you know, which is kind of like mind blowing because of how beautiful and seamless their music is too, you know. Other people that are right on top of each other. You look at, you know, different people like Soft Cell, you know, and what Mark Allman does versus, you know, it's just kind of very interesting to see a duo and how it kind of like works out in this realm. So to know that you work on everything so intimately is very interesting, you know, as opposed to maybe somebody think, hey, Trey works on music, Morgie sings, and like this is the obvious, that's what you see on stage, but not necessarily in the process, right?
Well, a big part of our like kind of, I feel like it's another unspoken thing, but our philosophy with it is to always keep it 50-50, like everything we do, you know, whether it's like creatively, you know, artistically, like the vision, the visuals, the audio, the money, you know, everything. It's like we're very much like equal, like we try to be completely equal parts to this. And I think that's kind of the key to like keeping a relationship positive, is like to make sure that, you know, we both feel like we have an equal stake in everything.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it also makes sense too, because like I recognize that this project wouldn't be shit without Trey,
and vice versa.
So that, I think, you know, 50-50, perfect.
Yeah, that's cool. And obviously everyone has like, you know, different band dynamics, and so it's just fun to kind of take a little peek in and stuff of that nature. So this is something I often ask, especially bands who are more electronic in nature, because I feel like, you know, traditional rock bands, right? It's like what you see is what you get. You get a 4-piece rock band, bass, drums, guitar, singer. Okay, cool, you know, or whatever have you. But in your case, in a lot of electronic bands, there's like a more of a choose your own adventure quality to playing live, right?
Yeah.
And how were those early performances for Korine, and how did you start to figure out, oh, hey, okay, we're taking the Porsche out of the studio, I guess, and we're gonna take it for a spin. So how did we start to arrive at the live show? Because what I saw was already something maybe a year ago, you know, new arrangements already out.
Right.
And, you know, I was just sort of like blown away by the whole vibe, you know, and I was like, this is great. I got to get these people to play Vitus like ASAP, you know, like I was super with it. But I know that's not the start. So tell me how that kind of came together.
Our first show, I was biting off way more than I could chew in terms of like having too much shit on stage and like having wires everywhere and like not knowing. We were always like, you know, we knew we didn't want to do like the laptop thing from the beginning. We just didn't want to have a laptop on stage, you know, whether or not we were basically doing what a laptop would anyway, but with a piece of hardware or like a sampler or whatever. It's just a matter of like, I just don't like seeing the Mac like logo on stage. It's just not my thing.
It's just a personal preference, I think, and it's like it doesn't truly matter. Like if your music sounds good, like nobody's gonna give a shit if there's a laptop on stage.
Right. Like I've seen amazing, like very punk sets with people with a laptop. So don't need to get me wrong. It just comes down to like what, you know, we think. But anyway, like the first show we ever played had like too many effects pedals, too many synths, sampler, vocal effects stuff, things, you know, plugged into weird, really precarious ways. And like I remember like seeing pictures,
like rack mounts.
Yeah, like seeing pictures from the first show, just all the wires. I was just like, oh my god. And then you know, obviously they got like, you know, the fat was trimmed and all that. And like when we went on our first like big tour, that was like, okay, we don't have a lot of space. We got to like make this like what works. And at that time we slimmed it down to just like the sampler, a few effects, and then like the one synth. And then we just at the start of quarantine, actually, you know, we had been debating about this for a while, whether, because there is like live bass on pretty much all our recordings. It's just kind of buried in the mix because we didn't want to make it too obvious that that's in there, because we didn't want people to have to like demand that we play that live before we were ready. And like,
where's the bass player? Oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. Like I play the parts in the recordings, and what's funny is that like we weren't like really financially able to like afford make like the pedals and stuff that to make the bass sound correct live until last year. So we just started doing it, but I've only ever played the bass on the streams.
Yeah.
So, but whenever we do go back, I will be doing it. Because now we were able to like get the pedals we needed for it.
Absolutely. And just figuring that stuff out is so much. I remember I DJ'd Uniform's first show, and it was just Mike and Ben. And Ben brought like 10 amps. It was just insane, you know? And now when you see them, it's like a completely different, you know, scenario, and we like laugh about it, you know? So that's always kind of like fun for me to just kind of like, you know, peek into those early shows, and probably a disaster or two in there, but at the same time, they're the learning experiences that get you to where you are now. Now, Morgie, you have such a distinctive way of kind of singing and delivering the performance nowadays. Did you have a time where you were really just trying to figure out the aesthetic of your voice to fit in to Korine, the music? Because it's such a distinctive part, you know? Was it just something that really just started coming out like that? Or is it something that you just tried to refine over time as far as like, hey, I'm going for this sort of thing, I have an ideal in my mind? Or was there something where it's like, this just started to happen and I was like, okay, let's go with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of came, like my singing style just, it kind of was like molded from playing live a lot, and like I don't know, like I always liked the way like, you know, people who sing like really quietly sound, and it's like sounds really pretty and stuff, but like live a lot of times, you know, you can't really, you have to just sing loud. And so I was just kind of trying to find a way to like be able to sing at an appropriate like loud volume, but like also pretty. I don't know, but I think it's definitely shaped from like, you know, playing in, you know, punk bands and shit like that, and like playing in basements with shitty PAs and stuff. You kind of have to scream a little bit and like, you know, sing in a way you don't normally sing. But I never really had anything like distinct in mind. Like I want to sound like this person. I mean, I'm definitely influenced by a lot of singers for sure. And like I said, I grew up listening to a lot of 80s stuff and like a lot of like new wave stuff, so just kind of stuck with me. Those are like the bands that kind of like taught me how to sing, like The Cure and like shit like that.
Yeah, I think that that's really interesting that you point that out, right? Because for some people, they don't like this is the trial and error we're talking about, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I'm singing out in this like sort of way now, but man, it's really working for me. But if I wasn't playing these like DIY shows, maybe you never get there, right? Like if you just start singing in the studio all the time and you arrive at something, and that's a different sort of way of doing it. What I like about the way that the delivery is that it feels so forceful, but with sounding beautiful. Like there's a pushed quality to it, but at the same time, it's the music and everything about it and the aesthetics, everything about it, it's very beautiful. It's not what I would sort of expect around all of this beauty. There's flowers and there's this new romanticism and there's this sort of pushed thing, but at the same time, it just happens to work so much. So that's why I was curious, like, where did that come? But I can imagine somebody in a basement somewhere, you're sitting there, you're like, I can't fucking hear myself.
Yeah.
Let me push that a little bit harder, and that's what comes out.
Yeah, it definitely shaped the way I sing, and like, you know, like I said, you know, I definitely appreciated all those, you know, acoustic bands and like, you know, bands that could like sing really softly and like really portray this kind of mood. But when you're in the basement, it's a different story a lot of the time.
For sure. So we're bringing the band together, we're playing local shows, things are starting to kind of percolate for Korine, you know, Philly, the whole thing. But the first time that I kind of heard the name was you went on some tours with Time Cop, I believe, right? Was some of those tours, which really interesting, because Time Cop more of like synthwave kind of thing, but it was like, okay, cool, we're you know, I feel like Korine's pretty singular in sound like today.
Right.
There's not a ton of bands. Maybe your Philly brethren, someone Night Sins, you know, shout out, you know, but there's not tons of groups that are super analogous to what you're doing, right? So what was it like going out with Time Cop and then just kind of starting to kind of spread the band out a little bit more and go on a national tour and see these other markets and get out of kind of, you know, playing the regional or local kind of scenes?
Well, I remember we got the offer because it was just like a guy knows the guy who was booking him basically, and was like, just thought of us because he likes us. And we had only been a band for like 5 months at that time.
Yeah, I think we played like
three or four shows before that tour.
Oh damn, it was quick, huh?
Yeah, and like, yeah, we didn't get it. It was definitely a blessing for us for sure. But I remember getting the call and being like, yeah, I don't really care who it is, we'll go. It's like a full US deal, you know, basically, or like bi-coastal at least. And you know, neither of us had really done anything like that before. And it was awesome. I mean, we loved it. It was like, I knew going into it, I was like, well, this has the potential to kind of like make or break the band, you know, because it's like that's like where the test is. And we figured out that we're just, you know, we do well touring. We're like, our personalities, you know, we like touring, we're suited for touring, we get along together on tour. So it didn't break the band, obviously. And we were like surprisingly well received also at all the shows, which was cool. Like, obviously not a lot of people knew us, but, you know, we sold out of like, we didn't bring a lot of merch with us because we didn't have the money to make a lot of merch at the time, but like, I think we had like 80 shirts we took with us and like some pins, and we sold out of everything. That was cool.
Yeah.
Sure. And I feel I've kind of put it on the map because, you know, besides, you know, being someone obviously who plays music, I'm a talent buyer, right? Like I run Saint Vitus and I do this. So when you just become part of the bill like that, I just know the name, you know, like, you know, you start to know the name and you're like, oh, okay, who's this, who's toured with that, or so on and so forth, right? Like what group or band or whatever have you, you know? So for me, it was like, okay, there's sort of like a name recognition and a value there. And then, but then when I first heard the music, I was like, whoa, this is not what I expected because of, you know, obviously the pairing. What was it like trying to, I guess in a way, win over a crowd that's not necessarily coming there for you? There's always that sort of moment for a band, you know? Sometimes it's really tough. I've been there, and sometimes it's really great, and you're making a bunch of new fans every night.
Well, that's the joy of being the opener, right? Is that like people are there not for you, but they're still there. Mm-hmm. You know, like they're going to be standing there because whether they like you or not, they're standing there and they're listening. And like, you know, you're going to get a percentage of those people who like it, and you know, you're going to get a percentage who don't, or a percentage of people who are going to like walk out or be like, I'm going to go smoke while they're playing or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. For our first like big thing, it went really well overall. I mean, it had its ups and downs, obviously, but
I mean, just the experience alone of like, you know, touring and stuff was like super valuable, I think, for us, because we were able to see that we can do it, and like, you know, we work well on the road together, and I don't know, it's just like it's just, I don't know, you have like a lot less to worry about. There's like a lot less on my mind when I'm touring. It's like the only thing I'm thinking about is like going to the next show.
Yep.
Or like, you know, it's nice. It kind of like simplifies my life for a little bit. And
Yeah,
it's
only
nice.
focused on music, right?
exactly. It's like, okay, you know, we wake up today, we're driving to here, we're playing the show, we're going to go to sleep, and then wake up and do the next bit. And all you really have to worry about is just like, you know, not crashing the car.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's a big one, please.
That is the big one. Yes, that's the absolute big one.
Yes.
We're very safe. Don't worry.
Yeah,
Anyone who's watching, don't worry. We're very safe.
yeah, I love that for sure. Please, safety first, man. And also, yeah, it is really important. You know, again, it's these things that all go into the finished product of music, right? That is like, you know, can we do this? And there's different moments where you hit new sort of levels and things of that nature. And so let's speaking of sort of like new levels too, one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit was I love the stage setup, the flowers, the kind of the presentation of a little bit more of what you're bringing there, which obviously with like the cover of New Arrangements, I kind of found that out afterwards, you know, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I see what's happening here, you know. What was sort of bringing that sort of element into it, and how are you sort of just developing the aesthetics for the band on more of a visual level? Because obviously we've talked about the sonics.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit of an artist myself, and you know, so I've always been doing like visual art and photography, and you know, Trey also shoots photos, and we would go and just like shoot together. I don't know, I've always really been drawn to like dreamlike kind of blown out stuff, because it's like I think the best way to explain it is like how a memory appears like in your mind. Like it's not like super clear, it's not like, it's kind of like amorphous and just is kind of like a feeling more so than like a visual representation. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it's almost like you can't put your finger on it like super precisely. I think like when I see what, you know, like especially that live stream when you had the clouds and like more stuff, and it was so bright, and I think that I really appreciate that, because like a lot of things in I guess like synth music tend to be coming from the gothier side, the dark side of things, you know. And so I get you know, to me I'm like, wow, all right, I see where there's a sugariness, there's a pop to this, there's a brightness to this,
right,
that's really refreshing to me, not only in the melody but also in the visual, that kind of comes together. And I think that that's almost it's hard for me to put like my finger on it, but maybe now you explain it to me a little bit, because I don't need to, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely intentional from our end, like what you said about the contrast with like what you traditionally see and like, you know, the gothier things, and like we love playing stuff like that. You know, we both obviously love like 80s era like goth stuff, and like the influence and like the music that has come from that. Philly has produced particularly a lot of great music in that era. But you know, I guess like one of our things that we've always done to kind of just stand apart is like show that you don't have to follow these like tropes to be goth, you know.
Yeah, you could kind of like interpret it how you want. It's kind of like interpreted through our lens,
Yeah,
I guess. You know, I don't, you know, don't get me wrong, I like, you know, bats and whatever, but like for me it's like, I don't know, it's more like kind of like this dreamlike sort of like faded out kind of vibe I want to bring.
Sure. And I think that to me, honestly, like just as a viewer of things, it sticks out. It's refreshing and it's cool. And it doesn't seem like, it doesn't feel like what you're doing is like a period piece either. Obviously, there's influence from, you know, the 80s greats or the new wave greats and some of these, you know, new romantic greats, etc. That I really like. But I don't feel this sort of throwbackness with the group that I feel maybe with other groups. There's other people maybe who are trying to hit things a little too on the nose, you know?
Well, we'll take that as a compliment, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
and that's why I'm like, oh, okay, cool. The aesthetics of this is evolving and kind of trying to move forward and you know, just translate into kind of the paradigm of today. And the songwriting is really tight and good. And that kind of stuff is you just either got it or you don't, baby. But speaking of that, you know, kind of side of things in songwriting, Morgie, I want to talk a little bit about lyrics and coming up with content on that side of it. I've had to do that a lot in you know, in my you know, kind of musical life and stuff like that. How do you approach just kind of writing lyrics for Korine and just kind of doing that sort of part of it?
Yeah, I feel like I've kind of just written lyrics like kind of the same way. I don't know, my lyrics are like obviously super personal and stuff, but I figure that if they make me uncomfortable, like maybe they'll like help somebody else. Like that, I feel like if you write something that kind of makes you uncomfortable, like it like it could have the benefit of like helping somebody else because they could like you know, relate to that or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I just like
vulnerability, I feel like, right? It's like you're telling secrets in public. And in a lot of ways, there's something very powerful to that. And that's what I sort of, you know, I feel the catharsis out of it, like in your singing, in the way that there is. And I'm like, wow. And then I start like listening a little bit more and trying to tune into, you know, sometimes I'm getting just swept away by melodies, you know, and I'm like, wee, you know, but then when I'm tuning in a little bit more to those aspects, I'm like, wow, okay, I see where the push is coming from. I feel like, you know, I'm starting to really like feel like the other more in a way intentional, like written side of it, you know? Is there writers particularly or lyricists that you kind of look to that you're like, ooh, I really like this or that or the other thing? Or has it always just been sort of like, hey, I'm just kind of dumping out?
I definitely like I like clever lyrics. I like people that could be clever and maybe even funny, but like also still be serious and like, I don't know. I think that's so impressive when something could like have like a lighthearted element, but also be like kind of like serious and whatever. But I don't know. I just kind of have always written, you know, things I've experienced or felt. But I think with like the lyrics, I don't really give like any context behind it. It's just like sort of like something I felt one time, but you don't necessarily know where it's happening or why.
Sure. And I think that you're right. Being clever or charming or, you know, or having a bit of like biting humor on something like that, it's disarming. It can kind of like, you know, it's like a good Trojan horse into maybe something that's a little bit more difficult or hard to address or whatever. So I definitely feel you on that. And I've always enjoyed lyrics that kind of have a little bit of that too. And all of a sudden I'm kind of like, oh, you know, this, but then when you like, on face value, it seems kind of like jovial and fun, but then when you really listen to it, you're like, man, that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. No, I've always liked songs like that have like a really like cheerful or like upbeat melody, but the lyrics are like, you know, I'm really sad or whatever.
Yeah, that's kind of our shtick, honestly.
That's the thing. We arrived to it already. Minute 45. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Restoring melodies, sad lyrics,
yeah.
Cool people. Korine, love it. So let's talk a little bit. So new arrangements, right? I love that record. I thought that one was like super good and stuff like that. And then we have a new single. We have Sunshine, right? Is that the
Yeah,
name?
yeah, that's the one. And then
Right?
we did the other album last year, The Night We Raised. That was the one that we did at the end of 2020.
Yes, and I love that. And I saw the live stream for it. I believe that was on Dark Energy, right? Was the live stream that
The
you
most
guys...
recent one, the most recent stream we did with the one that you referenced with the clouds.
Yeah,
That was Dark
love
Energy.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
That was so much fun. I was like, I was just like in my living room and it was all dark, and then it got my whole room got lit, right, and I was super pumped. I was like,
Yeah.
this is amazing. I'm having so much fun.
Yeah, as I said, that was also intentional because it was like, you know, we had talked about coming up to record at Vitus, but like at the time we weren't able to get like vaxxed yet, and we were like, you know, we've been like super safe this whole time. Like we only see each other like in our significant others, or we did before we got vaxxed. So we just decided to play it safe, and we were talking about like, well, how we want to do this, and you know, set stuff up, and we were like, let's just like put some clouds and make it super like bright for this one, because we knew that everyone else was going to be like in the dark, and Vitus in the dark, you know. So we thought it would be like a nice like juxtaposition. So
Yeah, I loved it. It made I was smile ear to ear. I was way
good. I'm glad to hear that.
yeah.
We like kind of subverting expectations a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, and it points back to the cleverness too, right? Like it kind of we're playing here with the medium, the genre, and the aesthetics of what you're doing. But so Sunshine's a fucking great song. I really love it. First of all, like I think it's great, and I think it's like peak Korine. Like I like the last record was cool, you know. I think like new arrangements, I kind of like that was the one that got me into it. So you know, any kind of like record you first hear is kind of like, you know, you have that like, oh, that's how I got in.
That's your connection.
Right.
Yeah, you know, like that's where I got in. But I feel like this is, to your point earlier, Trey, you were saying how we started massing more gear, we do everything in house or whatever. I think sonically this is taken even more of a leap, and then the songwriting also. It just, I got one song to go off of, but it's really tight, and the chorus.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's always our goal. That's always our goal, you know. I mean, I feel like that's probably every musician's goal. Like, nobody wants to like get worse as you continue your career as a musician. Like, you know, nobody wants to like put like, well, this next song is gonna be worse than the last song. I mean, that's just how it's gonna be, you know. So like, we're obviously striving for, you know, better, you know, subjective term there. You know, with everything we do, we're just trying to like kind of like actualize our vision more and more. And I feel like, at least so far, we've been able to do that. I feel like we've had a nice little upward trajectory since we started the band. And I mean, I agree. Like when we were talking about, you know, we're always working on stuff, and that song wasn't even going to be a song really. It was like a little instrumental that I made, and I was like, I don't really think this is going to fly as a Korine song because the instrumental is so different or whatever. And then Morty was like, I like it, and just wrote lyrics over it. And I was like, you know, this kind of slaps. So we just went for it. And I was like, I kind of think that like some people are going to react to this negatively, because this is by far our most not like synth wave 80s thing we've ever done. And I was like, you know, some people might like get mad about this or whatever, or think that this is like not the right thing. And we put it out, and it's been, you know.
Trey, I'm with Morgie. I'm Team Morgie. I'm so happy that that this song came to being. But again, I think that it points back to this sort of like subverting expectation and playing with, you know, things. And you have to kind of go for the things that are, you know, like just kind of driving you organically within the group, right? And there's an anxiety to that, right? Because there has been like a modicum of success, and you've been on cool tours, and people are talking about the band, and it's great, and what you both are doing are really cool. But then you have to keep pushing that a bit further, right? Did you find a little bit of push and pull between yourself, like within yourselves, really, you know, to be like,
yeah, I mean, like,
I don't know, you know?
The more like, you know, successful, another subjective term, that we get as a band, it's like, you know, and the more people who are like paying attention, it's like, you know, they have expectations of what they think we are. And when we have our creative selves, trying to make like what's purely us, you know, but also having to pay attention, and like that's obviously like on your mind. It's like, you know, we want the people who like our music to also like whatever else we put out. So yeah, there is anxiety with like making anything new, because it's like, you know, do I push the envelope too far? Or like, do I, you know, whatever. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I just think that that's kind of the artist's curse, right? It's like you're never going to be satisfied with what you make. You're always going to be like, oh, well, the next thing I make is going to be, you know, it's going to be better than this, and you're never happy. I don't know. I mean, it's not like really like that. You're happy sometimes, but
It's fleeting.
yeah, it's like you're just kind of always looking forward. I mean, at least in my experience, I'm always just like looking forward to the next thing.
Oh yeah.
And like I kind of like put the old shit out of my mind, and I'm just like, I just want to make something new, like always.
And Korine's only been a band for what, like 3 years or so?
Yeah, like 3 years.
Yeah,
like going on 3.5 now.
It's also very new, you know. I was in a you know, a post-hardcore band called Primitive Weapons for like about 10 years, you know, a little less, you know, 9 years, and we did a lot of great stuff. You know, we've toured with Dillinger Escape Plan and played with Quicksand and did all these tours and did really cool stuff, you know. But I remember now that I can like look back, it's very interesting thinking about my headspace and then what the next thing was, and then looking back and being like, oh, I remember myself in this time period, and I understand why I made this music, and then I'm like, and then why I did this, and I know what I was trying to push myself to do it every time. And now that I'm, you know, when you're making it, you're like this close, you know, and then when you look back, this, you can sort of just really see what it is you're really doing at the time, you know. So it's all being very close to it, because you're making the art, you know, you're doing it, you're having the feelings, you're writing the songs, you're doing all of that stuff, you know. But I think that there needs to be that bravery to push through, to get to that vulnerability, like you were saying, Morgie, you know, to just communicate and get those things out and try and translate. So without that bravery to push into new spaces, I don't think we get it or you get it. So I'm pro the movement. I'm a Sunshine enthusiast. So is Sunshine the first song of a bigger piece? What are we looking forward to now with Korine? Obviously,
we're always working on stuff. I feel like we're always like sitting on like some amount of songs at any given time, I feel like. And you know, it's a weird world we're in right now with the music industry, as obviously you know, and while we're here even talking to you on Instagram Live, you know. So we don't know really, honestly. I honestly, we don't even know. It took a lot for us to like commit to putting out an album that we worked really hard on in the middle of COVID last year. But we ended up ultimately being like, you know, this is something that we feel is important for not only us to get it out, but also for people who are like wanting it. And like, you know, people need something like nice in the midst of everything. So, and it was well received considering, but you know, now there's talk of like, when are people touring again? We're obviously like in talks with people about when are we touring again? What's that going to look like? There's so much uncertainty in the air. We don't know when we're going to be like playing live next. And, you know, we don't really know what our next move is really. And I feel like that's a lot of bands are in this position, like especially like right now in the last like couple months, where it's like, there's like the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's like still like so far out that you're just like, it's impossible to gauge or to plan really, because anything you could plan at this point could just fall apart like in an instant, you know. And so it's like, you know, what do you do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I feel the same way, you know. I'd like to kind of get back to my life a little bit, right? And in every sense, you know, it's like my job, the bar that I created, the group I'm in, you know. For me, it was like, it was that sort of thing. And of course, but it is sort of this sort of nebulous zone. But I think, you know, as far as the comments are going, you know, the Night We Raise helped people through some times, you know, and that being the same here, you know, it ended up on a bunch of Spotify mixes that I made and different things like that. And I was telling friends to check out this band, you know. So I think that in a lot of ways, what's interesting for us as musicians, right, we're one of the rare art forms where things happen in real time, right? Like a filmmaker makes the film, and then they don't expect you to like it or know about it like right away. We're in the moment. We're in the moment, right? Like you get the feedback right here. You're like, okay, this shit's happening.
Right.
I'm playing the bass right now, I guess. But that's what we're used to. So to me, I think one of the things that it's going to be really interesting is to see how those things that potentially people have been listening to in their houses, wherever, how it's going to translate into manifest into the physical, right? Who's going to show up out?
That's another thing is like we want, like, whenever we come back and it's like a sure thing, we want to like deliver like a religious experience to these people who like our music, you know. Like we have all these, like we talk all the time about like how to like better our stage setup. Even now, like when it's been like over a year since we've been able to play live, like, you know, like how can we make this thing like amazing when the time comes, you know? So that's like always on our mind, because we like nothing more than like playing live. So it's been a rough year.
We're always thinking about it from like it affects the way we even write songs, and you know, so the live aspect has always been super important to both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just said the development of your voice, right? Like playing live informed a lot of that. So yeah, it's obviously a really, you know, big component. And, you know, here at Saint Vitus, we'll put a flower budget in it and we'll do it big. We look forward to having you back. And thank you for your time. We're wrapping up the show now. And just, you know, keep doing what you're doing. It's obvious that in the comments, people have been loving what you're doing from home. And we can't wait to see you in person. And Sunshine's a great song.
Thank you so much.
You know, just check out Korine. It's a beautiful group.
We can't wait to like play Vitus for real someday.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, you know, you've been to New York City, but we'll roll out the red carpet when we're ready. All right. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
Ciao.